Hi, my name is Mike Dillard, and this is Self-Made Man, the podcast for men who want to leave their mark on the world and create a legacy of honor, integrity, and achievement in every aspect of their lives. I'm glad you're here, and once again, it is time to forge your destiny. All right, welcome back, everybody. Mike Dillard here, and I would like to welcome Jessica Ma to the Self-Made Man podcast. So, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So you've got an absolutely amazing story. Going through my notes to prep for today's interview, it was fascinating. You started your first business at a really early age, coding websites. A few years later, you started a hosting company that produced around 6 figures a year in revenue. And then you were inspired to start a high-tech accounting software as a service company called InDinero, which is basically designed to provide accounting, tax filing, and payroll management for small businesses. And after showing this to a couple of people out in Silicon Valley, you managed to raise $1.2 million in funding for that. And as of today, as far as the last time I read, please update me with the latest, but you've got over 75 employees. You've gone on to raise over $8 million in funding. Now, here's the really interesting part for everybody listening that I wanted to hold off on here for a second. You started that coding business when you were 11 years old. You started the hosting company at 12 or 13, and you founded InDinero at the age of 20. So when most people are just getting started in life and concerned about where they're going to go play and what cartoons they're going to watch for the day, you're just doing absolutely amazing things. So how in the world were you inspired to become an entrepreneur at such an early age?
Well, when your alternatives are basically raking leaves and doing boring chores or working at the shopping mall, I thought running a business would be a lot more appealing. So that's how I got into it. My parents were entrepreneurs. They still are entrepreneurs. They run sizable businesses. So I've been talking about everything from cash flow to AR financing to, hiring and firing people since I was a child at the dinner table. And those conversations really got me intrigued about doing a business. So it's been a really fun ride, and I couldn't see myself doing really anything else. And in college, though, I was trying to figure out, hey, what should I study? Should I go down the business path? I eventually decided to study computer science and started my current company, InDinero, while I was still in university. And the thought was, what kind of business would really make an impact? What kind of business won't just be around to make money and be fun to work on, but what will it actually get me up in the morning, make me feel like I'm doing something important? And I knew that I loved talking to other entrepreneurs. I loved brainstorming ideas with them, and I loved thinking that I could really help a lot of them out. And I knew that from my past businesses, accounting and tax was always a real nightmare. It was something I didn't always fully understand. It was something that my friends didn't understand and really intimidated a lot of them. And I thought, how great would it be if there was a business that could take care of the entire burden for them? And that's how InDinero was born. And so just to go back to where we're at today, we have about 200 full-time employees, funding around 15 million total now. And we're a lot further along, which is kind of cool. 4 years ago, we were just sitting in my living room, my co-founders and I, trying to figure out what to do. We didn't really have any revenue back then, and it was a pretty scary place. So it's kind of cool to see this built up over the past 4 years.
All right. So real quick, before we dive into InDinero and how you built that, going back to when you were young, sitting at the dinner table, as you mentioned, with your parents. I've got a 5-year-old, and being a lifelong entrepreneur myself, I would absolutely love it if he would end up, taking an interest in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And, were there any things that your parents did specifically to encourage that, or was it really just kind of osmosis and there was no other alternative because that's just what you knew?
I'd say that it was mostly osmosis, and I think they painted business in a really appealing lens. So look, it's hard work, it's stressful, it's going to be annoying at times. You're gonna You're going to come home wondering why you work so hard, but it's really, really rewarding. And you're never going to get this if you're working for the men. And so I kept on hearing that enough. I'm like, yeah, why would I want to work for the men when I could, be the woman, right? So that's kind of how I think my parents like subtly encouraged me to go down this path. I mean, I know that this was their ideal path for me. They didn't want me to be a doctor or a lawyer or anything. So they succeeded.
Awesome. Very cool. So could you tell us a little bit about what it was like when you're coming up with the idea for InDinero? Because it is a really tech heavy idea. I mean, this is some very sophisticated software. You're around 20 years old at the time. This is going to take a lot of brain power. It's going to take some money to hire the right people. Can you walk us through that process and who you started with and how you were able to pull that off and even go pitch it, to VCs at that time, at that age?
Yeah, sure. I think that age wasn't too much of a concern for people. It was just more of the fact that I hadn't built a business of this type of size before that had people scratching their heads. And so back then, I had a computer science background. My co-founder had one too. So we felt really comfortable on the engineering side, less comfortable on the accounting and tax side. So we hired like a bunch of accounting and tax experts. And today we have people with, combined hundreds or actually thousands of years of combined accounting and tax experience working for us. So we really try to fill in the gaps in all those areas where we don't really understand how to do things ourselves. And it's pretty technical in that, we're trying to automate away a lot of the work that you pay accountants and tax people to do. So we built up a team of people who have their master's degrees in AI and machine learning. And so that's been interesting because although I took a few classes in it, I'm definitely not an expert in it myself. And I'm definitely not doing any of the coding myself anymore. Shifting gears to how we convince people to give us that funding, despite not having a prior resume or experience to sell. I think for me, I just showed how much I could get done over the course of a few months. So I came out of school, we built the product, we launched it after about a month and a half of finishing school, and we got a lot of traction. We got thousands of businesses to sign up, and we had a hockey stick looking chart. And based on that, I went to investors and I said, hey, look, we're doing this. We know how to get publicity. We know how to get the word out there. We know how to build a product. And that's something that no one else in our space could really do quite as well as we can because they don't have technical backgrounds. So we pitched, in a way, we took our experience of being inexperienced technical computer scientists and we used that to our advantage. And so people thought we were even more appealing than some of our competitors who were, frankly, a lot more experienced and a lot older than we were. So, hey, your biggest disadvantage, maybe that's actually an advantage. I know we own that.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. And you mentioned you had a co-founder. I was wondering if you could walk us through what that is like, because having a co-founder is either really awesome or it can be incredibly challenging. And the way that I have tended to think about it or have even experienced it in the past is that having a co-founder can sometimes turn out to be similar to having two captains on a ship, which is not necessarily a good thing. There's a reason why there's one.
Yeah.
You can end up zigzagging left and right, and it could take you a long way to get to where you're going. So what was that like for you?
For us, it was a little different because we had very specific strengths and weaknesses. Like for me, I am a relationship builder. I love talking to people. I love meeting people. I love selling the dream of InDinero. And that's really great for hiring people, getting funding, talking to outsiders. And I was a strong programmer, but I wasn't nearly as strong as my co-founder at it. So the delineation of duties was pretty clear up front. I would play more of the CEO role. I would be the CEO and he would be the CTO. So he'd be responsible for product and engineering. And so for us, it doesn't feel like there are two captains on the ship. He's the captain of his arena. I'm the captain of running the business. and we complement each other really well in that regard. So it's worked out.
Awesome. I read a story that you guys, it hasn't been smooth sailing the whole time for you. There was a moment in time where you were quite concerned that things weren't going to work out for the business. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've had times where I didn't think it'd work out for the business, where I didn't think it'd work out between my co-founder and I. And I've had that several times now. And I think the first came maybe back in 2011. And we were running out of the funding I had raised. So I raised about $1.2 million within months after starting the business. And we were down to maybe $200,000 or $300,000 left of that. And that money would be gone within 4 months if I didn't completely cut away all my expenses. And so at that point, we had no choice but to lay everyone off. And basically, I had to call my parents and ask for them to help pay for the rent. My co-founder did the same. And we had a third late co-founder who we kept on and paid her like a very meager salary. And that was a really tough time for us because we weren't sure if we were going to pull through, because back then we weren't solving a big enough problem. We, at the time, had accounting software, but the customer would still have to do a lot of the work. They would have to actually do their own accounting, and there was going to be no real customer service. And we couldn't offer really great customer service because our product was too cheap. Like, we were branding it as a $10, $20 a month product. And so I went around to customers to watch them use the product and to get feedback and advice from them. And one of them said, "Jessica, this is silly. Why don't we just pay you thousands of dollars more and you take care of everything for us? Why should I have to do any of the work? I mean, the product's cool, but like, I'll pay you more. You'll do the work for me and you'll file the taxes for me, because that's the hardest, most painful part of this entire thing." And that's when I realized, wow, like, we could be doing so much more. And so we shifted gears overnight, and then we turned the business around after that. So that was quite the experience. But I'm really thankful I went through that, because now I know what the worst is like. And no matter how bad things are now, I'll look back at that and say, wow, it's definitely not as bad as that was.
Yeah, that's rough. And, going back to that inflection point where you've got 200 or 300, grand left out of the funding, what does that feel like? I've never raised capital for my businesses, but the thought of doing so, I have to admit, is quite scary because of the responsibility level that I would feel, having been given other people's money in pretty substantial amounts. Did you feel that pressure? What were you thinking to yourself? What were you telling yourself when you're in that position?
Yeah, I told myself a lot of horrible things. I remember I remember just lying down in bed and like looking at my ceiling and not being able to sleep and thinking, what happens if this doesn't work out? What will people think about me? And how will I recover from this? And is this going to destroy my future career prospects? And I was really worried about that. I'm like, wow, like, how disappointed will all the investors be? And I think the next day I'm like, that's just not productive thinking. We're going to figure something out no matter what. And we're going to keep on going, and we're not going to give up. We're not going to sell the crap we already have. We're not going to return the remaining money back to shareholders. We're going to figure this out and go until we're down to our final penny. And so my co-founder and I had a unsaid pact to do that. I mean, we never talked about when we would quit and take real jobs. We knew that we were going to just go straight into this.
Yeah, full bore, die trying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, it's required. Yeah, that's the mindset you have to have if you're going to pull through a challenge like that. So you'll have this epiphany talking to your customers, and I thought that was really interesting. You just said you went around and talked to your customers, and I'm trying to visualize what that looked like in my head. So were these people that you personally knew, and you went to their house? Did you bring them into the company? And like, how did that work? Because I think that's really, really important. especially when you're dealing with a software as a service, business model, is how effective is the user interface? Where are people getting stuck? Because there's a very good chance you're not going to hear from 99% of the people who are having problems. They're just going to stop using the software.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We called a lot of our customers up, and I actually said, hey, could I go to your office and watch you use the software from wherever you like to work? And I found that was the most effective, because they would be comfortable in their own office, and you could watch them like go about their actual work. It gives you context. And so we call them customer site visits, and I did a bunch of those back in the day.
I am all of a sudden getting flashbacks of a few months ago for the last couple of episodes of Silicon Valley and Pied Piper. I don't know if you watched the show or not.
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh. So
yeah.
I just assumed that if you live in San Francisco, you have to watch Silicon Valley.
That's what I hear. I just, haven't found the time to watch it yet.
Well, it's interesting. Same issue. The main characters of the show and their software startup have to go around and see how people are using their software, because it's just not working out the way they had planned. So might be a good laugh for you.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you've got this vision for InDinero, and if you could now, we haven't really dove into the specifics. Give us the 30-second pitch that you would give your clients and customers today, because frankly, everybody listening to this podcast is a potential client of yours, based on what you guys offer.
Yeah. Well, today InDinero actually does all the accounting and taxes for a business. So as I mentioned, after we saw that customer using our software, we decided at that point, we're actually going to do the accounting, and we're actually going to file the tax returns and take care of everything finance and accounting related for a small business. And today we work with companies as small as 2 employees all the way up to a few hundred employees, mid 8-figure sales. So it's a pretty wide spectrum of businesses using InDinero. And what we're selling is you don't need to work with a bookkeeper. You don't need to work with an accountant and then get all the software and then get a tax person. InDinero is a one-stop shop. We take care of everything for you, so you don't need to worry about it. We give you better software, and it's a lot more fun and easy to use. And we're going to help you actually run a better business through it. We're not just going to deliver you financials. So that's the vision for the business. We want to not just do accounting. We want to make accounting relevant and actually helpful for you. Because I know when I ran my first business, I didn't know where my cash was going. I wanted to get real metrics and insights from the business. So that's really where we're going with this. We want to help businesses be better.
Do you have do your clients have access to real people on your team if they have questions or to help things get set up? Because I know, with my books and my bookkeeper right now, especially when you're just getting started, with a new CPA, you've got to sit there and you've got to explain the little intricacies of your business, your expenses, how things are tagged. Is that an option with y'all?
Yeah. So we give everyone like a full team. So you get you get a team of people at InDinero to help you take care of all that stuff for you. And then we walk through a welcome process where we figure out what all those intricacies are. And that's the other part about InDinero. You get full redundancy. You're not just working with a bookkeeper. You got a full team behind you. So that one bookkeeper goes on vacation, or that one bookkeeper doesn't know how to handle a certain tax issue you're facing when you grow your business to the neighboring state. InDinero has probably done that before and can take care of all that stuff for you.
Very cool. Very cool. So, there's a phrase that has meant a lot to me during my career as an entrepreneur, which is that in order to get a specific result that you're after, you have to become a person who's capable of achieving that result, personal growth wise. How have you had to develop and change as a person in order to, be the leader of InDinero and to build it to where it is?
Yeah, it's great. I've had to change a lot. Like, I haven't run a business of this size before. And so I brainstormed like what are all the ways I could grow and develop? And one, I've always been great at just calling people for coffee. So today I'm meeting with a few other CEOs who run much bigger businesses than my own. So just ask them about how they run their business and I get advice from them. So I do that all the time, almost every day. at least one other person, just getting advice from them. I've got a mastermind group that I meet with once a month, and we spend 5-6 hours together, and it's 10 CEOs. Again, most of them run businesses way bigger than my own. And we just talk about all of our problems and challenges, and we help each other out. And that's invaluable. So the organization I'm part of is called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. And then there are others like EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, which my co-founder is a part of. And you feel like a real good sense of support there because you know that you have other people who got your back.
Yeah,
so I do that.
Absolutely.
Are you part of any of those? I
was a part of EO for a couple of years here in Austin, and then unfortunately, I had some trouble meeting the time commitment requirements. So, I mean, you know how strict they are when it comes to that for a good reason. But I was having a child at the time and starting a new business, so it just didn't work out. But absolutely love EO. It is a no-brainer for anyone who would qualify for that requirement. And then I'm currently in an organization called Tiger 21 here in Austin, which has been my favorite organization that I've ever been a part of because, and you've mentioned this a couple of times, I'm really the smallest fish in that pond. And so it's really nice to be around a group of other people who are 10, 20 years older than I am and who've accomplished more business-wise and who are in different chapters of life when it comes to priorities and family, and to get to glean wisdom from them has been awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've heard great things about that organization. So yeah, I started looking into that too. But the point is, like, there's so many of these groups and organizations out there, and you just got to go through them all and figure out what works for you, and really invest the time because it's a big time commitment, but it really pays off, I think.
To get a little bit more specific, what was your biggest weakness that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about which one I want to talk about.
Like, for example, for me, one of my biggest challenges has been the hiring and firing process. I hate to be the source of disappointment to anyone, and that's just been a really big struggle. But it's a requirement to lead a company and lead a team. So, is there anything specific like that would ring a bell for you?
Yeah, I'd say for me, to be even more specific about hiring and building a team, it's hiring and building a high performance management team that I really struggled with, because when I first started the business, I did all the work myself, right? I didn't have any people. Then I hired some people, had them do some work. But then I started hiring managers, and then I started hiring directors and VP level. And that's when things started to break down because I didn't know how to hire them. I didn't know how to manage them. And so that's where I feel like I needed the most mentorship and help. Like, there aren't really any books on how to interview like super senior team members. It's like all the materials out there, all the blog posts talk more about hiring individual contributors. So I think that's really where having a group helped me out.
Yeah, and that's why I ask a similar question to this on almost every single interview, because I don't know if it was just me, but I'm like, I haven't found the blueprint book that tells you how to go through that specific phase of building a business. Probably the closest, out there has been Ben Horowitz's book, which is around here somewhere. I'm looking around my office that I've been reading. But that's funny that you've kind of found the same thing. And so the way that you've learned that is to simply, sit down and glean insights from other CEOs who've already gone through it.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's not just about business. It's about personal and family too, as you know. And for me, that was never really a focus or a priority. I didn't want to take weekends off. I didn't want to have much of a life outside of my work. And I didn't want to really have much of an identity independent of my business either when I first came in. And now that I've been, in YPO and whatnot for the past 2.5 years, I really see the business as one part of my life. It isn't my life, and I am not my business. And that's really important. That's a really important distinction, because when things are not going well, when you're going through tough times, it's a lot easier to ride that through if you don't feel like you're so personally attached to it all. And that I did not fully appreciate until now.
Yeah, I think you tend to learn that lesson when you've had your first big loss, and you realize you'll live. You'll wake up the next day and life goes on without your business. Yeah, absolutely. So, moving forward, from here, what are your big priorities, both on a personal level and a business level? As you've started to dive into a little bit about the fact that you've probably got some priorities and goals on a personal level that you're now focusing on.
Yeah, well, on the personal level, I really love spending a lot more of my time like mentoring other entrepreneurs. I think that's just a whole lot of fun. So I've been doing that on the side, and it gives me great perspective in my work too. So I won't say that's purely personal and non-work related. And, I'm investing in my hobbies. I'm trying to spend more time reading and thinking. And that also helps my business too. So next week, I'm taking a think week. So Bill Gates, I read, took 2 weeks a year to just read books and essays and really think about the future of the world. And I was so inspired by that. I thought, wow, I should do that too. And so next week, Monday through Friday, I'll take a few phone calls in the morning each day. But other than that, I'm just going to be reading like a whole bunch of books. And again, that's both personal and business relevant. I'm sure I'll read a bunch of business related books too.
Stuff like
that.
What, if you don't mind me asking, on the personal side, what books are you going to be focusing on?
That's a really great question. I don't fully know right now what I want to end up reading, but I think that my general theme that I really love reading is like memoirs, like biographies, memoirs, and just like stories about people who've done amazing things with their life. So I'm interested in that. I'm interested in stuff like I'm going to read a book called like Missing Microbes, how the overuse of antibiotics is really a huge problem. So that's like an interesting field for me. I love reading books about politics. So that applies over to the business world. So I've got a lot of stuff like that.
What, when you look out at the world today and the speed at which everything is changing, what are you most excited about and what are you most fearful of?
I think I'm most excited by the fact that it's easier to start a business and grow a business because there's just so many resources out there. So I think that's going to be huge for not just aspiring entrepreneurs, but huge for women because now we're seeing more and more women come into running their own businesses. And that's really amazing to me. At least now I feel like there are so many more resources targeted at women and it feels a lot easier to get started. So that's one. What I'm fearful of though is that there's still like a huge amount of big problems in the world that no one really smart and successful is trying to solve. And we're not taking very unique approaches to solving them. So like cancer research, really feels like it's moving, but it's kind of at a standstill, for example. So that really concerns me and how we're not making much progress on like figuring out how to extend the natural lifespan of humans. Like no one, like you just don't have high profile people taking a stab at these really big problems. And that really bothers me. So, I've been thinking a lot about that and the politics in the developing world really concerns me. So, that might be a personal side project as well, how to really like help that. And, I'm sure I'll have a lot to show for that in the next few years.
That's awesome. So many cool things to think about. I think entrepreneurs, to become an entrepreneur, you have to be a natural problem solver. And so it's really cool to look at the world through that lens. And it just becomes this endless playground of opportunity to go do awesome stuff. So that's really neat. From a philanthropy side, has that been a priority for you or your business model? There's so many companies out there these days who have started to adopt really a for-purpose business model where philanthropy is really built into their revenue model. What have your thoughts been around that?
Yeah, I think that the way I describe that is conscious capitalism.
Yeah.
And I love the thought of conscious capitalism because you're a business and you're not a charity, you're not a 501(c), right? Organization, but you want to make a difference, right? You want to help your team members grow, you want to help your customers, you want to help the community, and so we're trying to build a conscious capitalist company. And the word philanthropy and nonprofit scares a lot of entrepreneurs away. So I think this is like a really beautiful movement. I mean, there are conferences and events popping up around conscious capitalism. And I think that's going to be a really huge thing over the next few years. We're going to hear a lot more about that pretty soon.
Yeah. Did you happen to read Mackey's book on the topic?
I have read Mackey's book. I went to Mackey Summit out in Austin in the past year. So yeah, he's doing a great job around that, pushing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of y'all, I don't mean to just have not bring you into the loop here, but the founder of Whole Foods wrote a book called Conscious Capitalism. And so that's really been one of the primary pieces that have inspired this movement for so many entrepreneurs. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely go check out that book. It is awesome. And so, Jessica, we've got about 5 minutes left, and I would love it if you would share maybe your 2 or 3 biggest pieces of advice or words of wisdom for all of the entrepreneurs who are listening to this out there. It could be on a personal level. It could be on a business level, with their financials. What pieces of wisdom could you share with everybody right now that they can take away and apply to their business right now?
Yeah, sure. I'd say one is, something that I spend a lot of my time on, and something that I wish I spent more of my time on with past businesses. On the finance and accounting side of your business, really crafting a really strong budget is, I think, the key of, the key centerpiece for how you're going to build your business over the next few months and over the course of the rest of the year. So I stare at my budget a lot. I'm always adjusting the numbers and figuring out, hey, if I hire people here, I'm not hiring people in another category. So having a really strong budget, I think, is number one. And I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs on this, and they've said that it's changed their business. And the way I describe it, it's kind of like playing SimCity. You have a finite amount of money you could spend on anything. So knowing where you're going to allocate your budget is just so important. Again, people underappreciate that. So I really have to vouch for it. So that's one. Two, I think that having a coach, like a really great executive coach or business coach, not just a bunch of mentors, will really take your leadership to the next level. So I have an executive coach I spend a lot of time with every month, and he's helping me build up my leadership. He's getting feedback from my direct reports on how I could improve and how I could be better. And he's brought to me a lot of, horrible things people have said about me and helped me improve on those areas. So I'd say that's the number 2 takeaway I'd have.
I would find that hard to believe, but
no, I have a lot of, I'm sure all of us have that, but yeah, it's so great to have someone who's on your side there who just works only for you.
So how did you find that individual?
I worked with him so he was doing YPO training. So he was training us on how to participate in the mastermind group. And I just loved working with him. And I thought, wow, he would be a fantastic personal coach for me. And that's how I decided to hire him.
Okay, cool. So that was a service that he has offered, before to other founders, and that he was open to doing, or this was just kind of a one-time deal with you?
So by day, his full-time job is to be an executive coach. And so he coaches a lot of high-powered CEOs out in Silicon Valley, and doing YPO forum training was just something he did because he thought it was fun.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's how I met him. So anyway, that's my number 2 takeaway. I have plenty more, but I'd say those are some things, 2 things I really wish I did more of sooner.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us here on the podcast. And where can people go to connect with you and obviously to check out InDinero?
Yeah, you could find me on jessicama.com. That's my blog. Email me, ceo@indinero.com. And yeah, don't be a stranger. I love hearing from people, and I love meeting other entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Well, this was a huge pleasure, and personally, I had a lot of really valuable insights from this, especially just right here in the last couple of minutes with the executive coaching idea. So, Jessica, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and thank you all for joining us here today on the episode. If you had some big takeaways, which I'm sure that you did, obviously, please feel free to pass this on to your friends and colleagues, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much.